Once upon a time, there lived a Jesuit monk named Carlo Ladoli. Being a monk, Carlo lived a very sparse life and thought that everyone around him should too. One day, while walking through the city street, he thought to himself, "Why do buildings need all those flashy ornaments? They don't make the building more useful and, frankly, they're ugly." And so he wrote his thoughts down. Fast forward to 1896. Famous architect Louis Sullivan, heavily influenced by Carlo, writes his own treatise on the aesthetics of tall office buildings. He writes, "It is the pervading law of all things organic and inorganic, of all things physical and metaphysical, of all things human and all things superhuman, of all true manifestations of the head, of the heart, of the soul, that the life is recognizable in its expression, that form ever follows function. This is the law." And designers have been confused ever since. Until now. This is Form Follows Function, a distance education project by Daniel T. Richards. Meet Brad. Brad is a design student at Louis Sullivan University. In a recent lecture, Brad's professor told the class that form follows function is the only design principle they would ever need to know. The other students were confused, but luckily for Brad, he had already seen this tutorial. He knew to ask his professor, "Are you talking about the descriptive interpretation or the prescriptive interpretation?" A plus, Brad. You see, form follows function can be interpreted in two ways, as a description of beauty or as a prescription for good design. As a description of beauty, form follows function advocates simplicity over complexity, that beauty results from the purity of function and not from ornamentation. Boo! This aesthetic principle originally came from the idea that form follows function in nature. In reality, though, we know that this principle isn't always true. As a prescription for good design, form follows function advocates considering functionality above all other design considerations, including usability, ergonomics, and especially aesthetics. Remember Brad? Well, Brad graduated summa cum laude from Louis Sullivan University and got a job at prestigious design and consulting. His first job is to design a wristwatch for 20-somethings on the go. Brad thinks back to his college days and decides to use the prescriptive principle of form follows function to design the watch face. As a result, his watch is digital. From a purely functional standpoint, a digital watch transfers the information to the user in the simplest, quickest way possible. Another victory for form follows function. Yay! Or is it? Brad thinks his design is great, but his boss isn't so keen.
"It's ugly,"
his boss says.
"Our customers aren't going to like it."
Suddenly, Brad has a realization. He should use the principle of form follows function as a guide, not as a restrictive rule. Yay, Brad! Boo restrictive rules. Your criteria for success, not any one design principle, should be the primary consideration for determining a design. If the success criteria for Brad's watch were speed and accuracy, then the digital design would have been appropriate. His boss, though, based at least some of the success criteria on aesthetic appeal, so Brad should have gone with a more minimal design. Notice that Brad could argue that either side of the design spectrum is informed by form follows function, the digital as prescription and the numberless as description. So, let's review. The concept of form follows function can be interpreted as a description of beauty or as a prescription for good design. In either case, it promotes simplicity and functionality over complicating ornamentation. So, the next time you get into your Hummer, with its digital clock display, and drive to your local IKEA, think about the designs you see and ask yourself, how does this design follow or violate the concept of form follows function? Who knows? Maybe you'll find something interesting. This has been Form Follows Function, a distance education project by Daniel T. Richards.